love to just get you warmed up with is the issue of why, from your perspective, and maybe from the perspective of constituencies that you talk with, caucus, constituents, others who see what do you see in the importance of expanding broadband, and kind of what drives you towards working on the issue right now? And that would be great if we begin that way, and we'll start down there and then go this way, and then we'll come back.
All right, I'll try to be brief. I'm not filibuster this question, but thanks for the thanks for the invitation today. It's a topic, of course, I love to talk about, and just so glad to see the progress we've made in the last couple of years. And so I hope in 2016 we're able to build upon that progress and add some momentum to this. I know the fund that we created, I think, has done some tremendous work around the state. I continue to hear from applicants that were funded or that weren't, or that want to apply now, and they're hoping that we're able to put some real money behind this effort, because I know a lot of folks have sat out on the sidelines in the years past. But that's not the question you asked for me. Why are we talking about this? And in a nutshell, I think this is the great equalizer in greater Minnesota, and I think it is that vital 21st century infrastructure that is going to level the playing field and allow the areas of the state that might not have been able to enjoy the reemergence from our recent recession to get back in the game. And I think in this session we're talking about disparities, we're talking about the areas and the folks who are not feeling the economic growth and prosperity. I think broadband is a great area to invest in and to level that playing field. At the end of the day, we can get lost in talking about technology, but we've got to focus on the end user experience and the applications. So precision agriculture, it was great to see the focus on precision ag at Farm Fest last August. I think that's incredible conversations throughout the day. Whether it's a telemedicine, we have a Telemedicine Act of 2015 that passed last year, and in dealing with some of those issues and reimbursements, I think it can open the floodgates for applications in telehealth in rural Minnesota. Whether it's distance learning, we're seeing more and more school districts using devices and having those one-to-one initiatives. But I hear from superintendent and school administrator and teacher and parent after another saying those devices and those initiatives are only so good as the connectivity that serves them. And when you leave the school building, a lot of students just don't have that access still to the day. And then you get into economic development. And I know just in my hometown of Reading, we've had a couple of businesses pop up in spare bedrooms or in garages over the last couple of years that have grown due to connectivity. And now they're going to have a presence on Main Street. And I think that sort of success story can replay itself over and over throughout the state. Broadband is getting folks a chance to get back in the game. And so much more could be said, but I think this is the thing to be talking about.
We'll give you more chances.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, Senator Schmidt certainly hit on the high points there, and I agree with all that he has said. I really do believe in, even though I represent a metro district, I believe in a one Minnesota, and that we all need to be strong throughout the state, and includes our out-state brothers and sisters. So whether it's economic development, healthcare, schools.
We look a lot alike.
Right, sometimes you lose your mind. So I really do think it's important and essential for the issue that's come up when I talk to constituents in the district I represent is the issue of affordability, clearly. And even though you have broadband running by your house, if you can't afford to access it, then we have problems. So that's something that's a little bit closer to home. But in terms of the need and importance of broadband, it's clearly essential infrastructure for the state, and we need to make sure it's accessible wherever you are.
Okay, well, for me it's a little bit more personal. I'll start with my roots bring me back to just a small town language arts teacher. Love the classics. In fact, my son's middle name is Aeneas. Well, he is now learning how to appreciate that even now. But as a small town English teacher in southern Minnesota, we only had access to so much stuff. And so in 1994, 93, when we got our first dial-up connection at 28K, you guys remember those speeds, I suddenly had a world, not very quick, but I had a world that I could access and take these kids through. So with that, I then moved to Pierce, Minnesota as a technology, and I was in tunnels, I was circumventing the fire marshal, whatever I could do to get wires. I remember pounding holes through firewalls that looked like insulation, like what's the big deal? Apparently it's important. So I wired central Minnesota all through this, and I just learned the value of what this was doing to kids. I eventually then went on to start a couple businesses, and we can get into all the things in economic development, we can get all the political phrases and all that, but the reality is we have millenniums who this is their frontier. And if we're going to let them go out and roam a little bit, we're going to have to open that up for them. And so that's for me what this is about. And I also know that part of why I'm driving this is because innovation and technology, the boundaries are the only ones that we put on. And so, if we're going to start to call wired connections, we'll go there, but we have to open it all up. We could be bouncing signals off satellites or whatever, but we've got to stay out of the way of that because we're going to hinder their progress. Because frankly, these kids will figure it out. The next Harvard graduate that drops out and does something, they're going to figure out ways to get around these rules because that's what we do. So that is my background in it. That's why I'm here and doing what I'm doing.
Well, for the governor and lieutenant governor's office, we see broadband as one of the key components of making Minnesota's a state that works for everyone, everywhere. A lot of what we're going to be focused on this session and in the governor's budget is wanting to make sure that no matter where you live in our state, that you have access to quality services, schools are high quality, and that theme kind of extends to broadband. And so to the senator's point about how it can be a great equalizer for Greater Minnesota, we want to make sure that Greater Minnesota communities have the same opportunities to innovate and connect with the rest of the world, and students learning online, and we see broadband as like a key component of making that possible.
Thank you. So we know that there's a lot of interest in broadband, and there's a lot of momentum. You've actually all kind of exuded that in what you have said already. But we're curious from your political crystal balls that are sitting in front of you right now, what are the obstacles and the opportunities that the task force really needs to be aware of as we frame this issue going forward and try to do our work to assist, especially in this session and beyond the session, to help out. So taking a look forward, particularly with a focus on this session, the obstacles and opportunities. Allison, can I go the other direction?
Sure, I'll start. So, as you noted, Madam Chair, the governor has already proposed $100 million for the state grant program. And, from his perspective and from the lieutenant governor's perspective, the fact that we have a $1.2 billion surplus, which could fluctuate a little bit with the February forecast, but given that we have this really large surplus, they see broadband as an area where we have a really unique opportunity to make a historic investment. Now, I think one of the challenges will be seeing what other proposals and ideas come out of the legislature as the conversation begins in March. And of course, one of the obstacles or potential challenges that I don't think is unique to broadband by any means is the fact that you're a really short session. I was reminding myself what the schedule looks like once March 8th comes, and within 3 weeks we have our first policy deadline. A week later, the next policy deadline. I think within a month or so within session, budget bills will have to come out. So it's just going to be really rushed, a lot to do. There'll be other areas of focus besides broadband. So I think that kind of global picture, is definitely something that could pose a challenge with all the different issues that need attention this year.
So, obstacles that I see, obviously, we've come out with a position at $35 million, which is the lower end of the spectrum, and with good reason for that. I mean, we're going to have a number that's all over the place. I mean, we know there's reality versus what we can accomplish in the mentioned session. But one of the main reasons the number that we have is where we have that is because we need to put an emphasis on telecom reform. And we're more than willing to talk about as much as we can get. Let's get every penny we can scrape together for this program. But let's not let the numbers supersede the fact that we need some telecom reform. I believe, I haven't read it yet, but I think there was a hint that, and listening to Mr. Niles, telecom reform is going to be very important. We have two bills on the table right now. We have the White bill, the MTA, and I know Representative Johnson is working on one of those. I think we have broad agreement on the bills, and one bill in particular has really good agreement. And one of our obstacles has got to be, let's find out where we truly have compromised, push those through, like the MTA bill, and then get the number to follow that we can get. I don't know what number. I mean, I will tell you, I don't know. I don't know if the number is 50, 75, 35. I have senators that are at 0. I have Republicans in the House that are at 0. And so, I mean, that's where our spectrum lies. And, you know, the people that are at 0 have good reasons to be at 0. The people that are at 100 have good reasons to be at 100. But we're going to have to hammer all that out, and in a very short session. So I can be very forthcoming and say that telecom is very, very important to the House Republicans. And we're willing, you know, we certainly want to do the broadband, we want to put the money in the grant, but we need to have that reform, mainly because of what I talked about with innovation. If we're getting in the way of these providers, we're getting in the way of innovation and technology that could be efficient and very competitive.
Obstacles, opportunities.
Obstacles, opportunities. Okay, well, first of all, I'd say one of the opportunities that I've enjoyed is working with Allison and Ron and Matt on these issues, because they are very collaborative and good humor and have the right, you know, the right approach to dealing with this. But to me, I really enjoy that aspect. This morning, I just wrote down what I thought some of the obstacles and challenges might be. One is the issue of the CAF funding, Connect America funds, and broadband money. How to best mix those two. I think that'll come up. The fact that, you know, we're getting almost $500 million over the next 6 years, and what does that mean with respect to the broadband request? My preference would probably be to use it to supplement some of the CAP projects, improve them, make them better. You know, maybe add more slams between areas, that sort of thing. So that's an issue that's out there. We talked already about the amount of money. I have a bill out there for $100 million from the general fund that's still there. Yes. You know, I'll probably look at it from the surplus money, but that's probably my expectation. That'd be around $100 million for the broadband grant program. The speed goals is a challenge. I did look online and saw your task force went to 25.3. I could see picking up to, some people want 100 symmetrical, you know. But anyway, that's out there. The speed goal issue. Anchor institutions having fiber connectivity, that's a big deal. Schools in particular, making sure that they're connected. I think there's like 25% that don't have fiber, so I can see that coming up. I mentioned affordability and you know, fixed broadband going through our neighborhoods. Again, can people afford it? That's a big deal. And what does that mean for, you know, places of low income? Areas that I represent. I've heard labor costs mentioned. You know, that's one of the big costs. Probably the largest share of construction costs, as far as I know. What's fair and reasonable for rural area projects? I think that will be brought up a challenge. That'll be a challenging issue. The definition of underserved and unserved areas. Those, you know, purposes of grant money. Definition going to be. I can see that coming up. The home broadband adoption. I saw that you've probably seen this through that Pew Research report. That's decreased over the last couple of years, while the mobile has increased. You know, so what does that mean with respect to affordability and the use of mobile phones for accessing employment opportunities, healthcare? You know, what does that mean? So I'd be interested in task force opinion on that. Omnibus tax bill is coming up this session. The session, as you know, is noted. And does it make sense for telecom sales tax increases or permanency? You probably addressed that in your. Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. And then lastly, what Ron mentioned, reform of telecom regulatory structure. And what would that look like? And what can be agreed to? So those are some of the opportunities and challenges that are. Like I said, it's going to be a quick session, so
All right, I think that the panelists have done a nice job of outlining some of the challenges. Obviously, the time is going to be probably the biggest one. I look at the opportunity we have here with a fixed cost, gap of what, $3 billion. I think this task force has identified the cost it would we would incur, public-private sectors, whatever, to meet our state speed goals. And that's not something that we're going to be able to do by the state. That's not something we're going to be able to rely on the feds for. It's not something that's going to happen at the local level or private community. We've got to be all in on this. And I think that's a great opportunity for us in this session with one-time money available for us over the next couple of years, one-time sunk cost need for investing in this infrastructure. Now is the time to make these investments. So that's the great opportunity for us right now. One-time money, one-time need. We've got to get the job done and focus on funding the fund. And I think that should be the primary focus for us this session, is funding the fund. We spent a lot of time in 2014 putting the policy together, and we tried to respect concerns from all corners of the discussion. I remember getting together with industry and spending hours talking about this. And I think the fund policy is pretty darn good. Certainly open to talking about it some more if we need to, but I think the real issue for us is the fund and putting money behind it. And so with that, making sure that we've got the right policy in place. There may be a conversation about how we're getting the most out of every dollar we sink into the fund. I know Representative Graffo said, hey, if we're going to invest in broadband, let's get some broadband. Well, what does that mean? I think that's what we're thinking about here. Making sure that as a state we're getting the maximum return on that investment. There's a lot there. I think better understanding how to play off of the CAF funding and federal dollars, we've got a great opportunity here, I think, to make those federal dollars do something amazing for Minnesota. And I'm hoping we're able to put our heads together and chart the right path for doing that. But with that, I think, comes a challenge, and that's the challenge of misinformation that I think was getting around last year, and I fear that it may be getting around this year too. The fund that we created, it's technology neutral. We're not trying to pick winners and losers. We're trying to address a fundamental need that we identified in our listening session a couple of years ago. We hit it up, 15 times around the state. Hundreds of folks showed up. Industry was at every meeting. And the challenge that was identified at every one of those meetings was the lack of investment capital, the lack of return on investment. And that's what this fund is seeking to address. And so that's one of the big takeaway I took from those listening sessions around Greater Minnesota. That's why we've got the fund, and I'm hoping we're able to focus on that. But with that conversation comes a whole list of other issues, and let's keep an open mind as we talk through those. I think there's some merit to re-regulation, as we call it, deregulation, however reform, however we want to package that. I think there's some merit to that. But let's not take our eye off the ball here. We've got a fund that we spent a lot of time trying to set up. I think Dan did a great job. We've got a great Office of Broadband Development. We've had 2 successful rounds. But a lot of folks are sitting out. They're waiting for us to get serious about funding this thing. And let's focus on the money, because that's what we've got now. One-time money for a one-time need. And so with that said, I could go over a few more things, but I think that sums up my thoughts.
I want to point out that we do a